It's CBUS Daily, day 18 of this T20 World Cup. I'm Adam Collins, Jeff Lemon is him. We're all here for CBUS Super, making your hard work pay off. This is going to be hard work for my voice, but we're going to get there anyway. We're going to do it anyway. Jeff, summarise the second game, the game that had a lot riding on it, India-Bangladesh, in 30 seconds.
Bangladesh nervous, early drop catches. KL Rahul smashes a quick 50. They get him out. They're pricing out wickets at the other end, but Virat Kohli keeps going with SKY, gets them up to 185. And Bangladesh are chasing it, 66 for none after 7 overs. Lytton Das makes a 50 in the power play. What's going on? And then it rains. They're off. They're ahead on Duckworth-Lewis. They're going to win, but no, they get back on. Set 151 in 15 overs. Start panicking, start losing wickets. It comes down towards the end. Nurul Hassan needs 20 off the last over, gets most of them. Needs 6 off the last ball, can't quite do it. India by 5 runs.
We were nearly going to a super over. No, not quite. But tell you what, he batted well. I think Ben Jones tweeted that he's hit more sixes than fours in international cricket. I think he's hit now 15 sixes since the last World Cup back in 2021. So if anyone was going to do it on the last ball, it was probably him. Or Taskin Ahmed, who we were saying on commentary was doing his best Lance Kluser impression with that flay through the offside in the penultimate over.
Clear
and
the
popping
front
one
leg through the covers,
and popping one into the football stand a couple of balls later. This was it probably flatters Bangladesh that they lose by 5 runs on one hand. On the other hand, you can easily build the case that they deserve to win the game on account of the fact that the adjustment on Duckworth-Lewis Stern after the rain delay it may not have been as generous to them as you would think after getting out of the blocks the way they did. It's always a matter of conjecture about this when they do an adjusted tally, but kind of reminded me of that old adage about football, which I'm going to get wrong here. Someone will correct me in the comments, but 2 teams play for 90 minutes and Germany wins. Like, it kind of feels the same like, 2 teams play for 40 overs and India wins. Like, at some point, India were going to win the game. It was just kind of how they were going to do it. In the end, Arshdeep Singh was the reason they did it. And Hardik Pandya, who they bowled back-to-back overs where they took 4 wickets in 11 balls, and that's why they won the game.
Well, there was a period there of 5 for 24. In the end, I think it was Bangladesh panic. And so we'll come back to the first innings maybe afterwards. But so we'll look at this a couple of ways. Bangladesh come out, they're looking at 185. It's a tall target, and they've got to go hard. And Lytton Das does that. Plays magnificently. Has a bit of good fortune. There's an edge that doesn't quite carry to Dinesh Karthik behind the stumps, and there's another one that goes very wide of him, and Dinesh Karthik dives away and sort of fingertips it, gets a bit of the webbing of the glove to it and can't hang on to it. Those are the chances. But the way Lytton Das plays, the way he goes through cover, the way he takes on the pull shot, he hits sixes off consecutive overs from Bhuvneshwar Kumar, and that normally doesn't happen. Very, very few players have made a 50 in the power play. I think he was the 3rd in the history of T20 internationals to do it. It is not often done.
Okay.
So
in my own mind, I thought not that it was common, but I suppose it's a strike thing because down the other end, Shanto wasn't getting too much strike. Indeed, there'll be someone who'll look at his strike rates and go, "Oh, Shanto struck at 90. He's the reason Bangladesh lost."
Sure.
No, and I don't think so. Much the same way that I don't think Kane Williamson's innings is the reason why New Zealand lost last night, by the way. It's like, if you've got the dynamic working with a pair, sometimes that can be more important than the crude measure of runs per 100 balls. And Shanto was doing the right thing and invariably trying to get off strike rather than trying to hit boundaries.
How fast is the other guy going who's going
trying to measure
him as well? And so, they were absolutely blazing it. And it's in the 6th over of the power play that the 50 comes up. 21 ball half century. He's got them in this wonderful position. The rain comes down after 7 overs, 66 on the board. And so if you're a parochial partisan of either team, I've got something for both sides here. Duckworth-Lewis, in my opinion, doesn't really work for T20 cricket this early on in an innings. Like, maybe it needs to be the 10 over mark. I don't know what it is. But when they were saying Bangladesh are ahead, I thought Bangladesh are probably not winning this game if it's a 20 over thing, because probably he's going to get out at some point, and probably it's still a long way off. There is a lot of time in the game for India to come back and win it. And so at that point, you say India are unlucky if they're deemed to lose. Bangladesh are also unlucky with the requirement.
Noting that Bangladesh are ahead by 17 runs of the target at that point.
They're ahead of the target by 17
a long way,
runs, sure. And that's kind of the point, is that teams, because it's averaged out over every match that happens in history, teams that have more reliable middle and lower order batting inflate the averages, if you like, of teams that don't. So Bangladesh, to me, seems like a team where if pressure were put on, the middle order might fall out with a high run rate required.
Which we saw. And they did drop a batter today with Sumyasaka being dropped in favour of who was it now? Sharif al-Islam. They recalibrated in order to give themselves another bowling option. They didn't feel like their bowling was strong enough for India. So, and in the end, their batting didn't get the job done.
It didn't. But the flip side to that is that Lytton Das has them going along at 9.4 runs per over through those first 7. Then when they come back out again, they have to go at 9.4.
Yeah, that's what jarred for me.
And the rationale is, okay, they have fewer overs to face, which means that they have less opportunity to lose wickets. Losing wickets doesn't matter as much. They can attack harder. But it can be equally hard for new players to start. So it's not like you can just throw wickets away and new players can come in and hit from ball 1. In a way, if you have more time going at 9 and over, it might be a bit easier if you have more overs up your sleeve because you've got a little bit more time to set yourself and try to make up lost ground. So that was the bit that didn't seem fair, that Bangladesh had to come out and keep scoring at this absurd rate. It's like they didn't really get any reward for how quickly they were going. Although if he'd gone more slowly through the first 7, they would have had even more to catch up in the last 8.
Yeah, I think I broadly agree. I mean, I haven't thought a lot about DLS over the journey, but today it kind of felt like, as you say, if you need 8 and over and suddenly you need 9.5 and over, you're 1 wicket away from that equation meaning nothing, and they lose a wicket second ball, and it is a set man. And, we can't avoid it. It's the elephant in the room, right? This will be the talking point out of the game. I'm going to be careful with what I say here because, truthfully, I can't be fucked getting in trouble and losing my accreditation, right? But look, the big covers were coming off when it was still raining.
Yep.
The rope was doing the rounds when it was still raining.
I mean, the rope was doing the rounds for the entire time, and that's
good. And by the way, I'm not being critical of that bit. It's just that I don't know. We watch a lot of cricket,
and that's not how it's usually done.
We watch a lot of cricket, and people get angry. It's just. I don't really. I'll stress this point. I genuinely don't give a fuck who wins 98% of games of cricket I watch, including tonight. I just don't care. It's not my inclination to care. But I notice when things stand out. And that was odd. And it probably had nothing to do explicitly with some impresario sort of saying, get them back on. But there's implicit stuff. And, anyway, I'm not going to get into it.
I would put it this way. The rope going around felt performative. That's fine. Doesn't matter. If you want to drive the rope around, fine. The point of the rope is to shake water off the tip of the blades of grass and put it down into the soil so it drains. Usually there's not much point doing it until it's finished raining. Whatever. You want to drive the rope around, fine. They literally took the covers off while it was still raining.
Yeah, and not all the covers. I want to stress this point.
Not the
because some people on Twitter were kind of getting into me by saying that not all the covers, but when it's raining that heavily, the square remains covered until the rain has stopped.
When it's raining at all, the square remains covered.
Even when it's drizzling, right?
I mean, that's always a thing.
Even when it's drizzling. So this was, and that's often a thing we complain about, or maybe not complain, but we remark upon, is that isn't it odd that we wait until the rain completely stops? This rain, I promise you, when that cover started coming off, that big square, obviously they knew the rain was stopping soon, but the rain hadn't stopped yet.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the smaller cover was covering, strictly speaking, but Lytton Das fell over twice in 2 balls upon returning to the middle. Once he hurt his hand, and next ball he slipped and got run out. And that ends up being the defining moment of the game of cricket. And that's annoying because I don't really want to talk about this stuff. I want to talk about Arshdeep Singh.
Yeah, I want to talk about Lytton Das continuing to bat, given how well he was going. And the other part of that equation is that he got pretty unlucky because KL Rahul pulled out a brilliant throw from the deep, 1.5 stumps, hit it direct. That doesn't happen very often.
It was brilliant fielding.
So he ends up getting run out when normally, even with the slip, he would have been fine. He would have made it in. And he doesn't make it in. He gets run out at the non-striker's end, coming back for 2. And he's furious as he goes off, and he remonstrates with the umpires, and it's because the field is wet. Now, at the break, when they went off, just as they were about to start coming back on, Shakib Al Hasan, the Bangladesh captain, was very, very animatedly remonstrating with the umpires. And you can guess that what he was saying is that it's too early to ask us to go back on the field. It's still wet. You haven't tidied it up properly. It's not reasonable. And sure, he's got a vested interest in doing so because if they don't get back on, then Bangladesh win that game on DLS. But Bangladesh were unhappy at having to go back out there. They have the key wicket goes down, and then other wickets start falling pretty regularly, and it's panic. Panic sets in. They've got this big run rate. They don't have a really set player. Shanto gets out next. He hasn't been striking the ball particularly quickly.
But he does hit a 6 before he gets out, right?
He hits
he
one
went
6.
up the gear. He hit a 6 and a 4 after after losing Lytton Dust, and you're thinking, well, he did hit 71 from 55 balls a couple of days ago. Maybe he's the guy that picks up the baton, but yeah, that was a good piece of fielding from, it was Surya Kumar Yadav, wasn't it, down at deep third, long on, who takes that, and he's fired up. Surya Kumar Yadav strikes me as the kind of guy, if he started his career earlier, would probably be captain by now. I know he, sort of off the field, he was seen as not sort of, there were reasons why he wasn't picked for India earlier.
He's got tattoos at him. Tattoos.
I don't think it was the tats. No. Anyway, but I think that, like,
once upon a time,
temperamentally,
you couldn't get a captaincy job.
When he's running around like Kohli, pumping up the crowd, I was watching him point to each stand and pointing at the shirt and all. He really is in that Kohli model, and I suppose they've played a lot of cricket together, haven't they?
Yeah, and they put Afif Hussain up the order. He has a go, gets caught. Shakib gets caught. Mossadegh has a big charge and misses and loses his stumps.
After hitting an extraordinary 6 first ball.
Yeah, first ball 6, second ball ducks a bouncer, third ball bowled.
That first ball, when he kind of didn't even make room, he flat batted it over cover point, and I think it's still travelling. I think if the ball's still going, you hit it that hard. It was as hard as the ball at Tashkent Ahmed hit later. My sense of all of that, when they lost to 5 for 24, I think he said, and 4 in quick succession in those 2 overs from Arshdeep when he came back, and because the ball wasn't swinging in the power play. One quick aside here, Arshdeep didn't bowl more than 1 over in the power play because the ball wasn't moving off the straight, which is why they went after Bhuvi, because Bhuvi's main advantage is bowl 2 or 3 in the power play, have the ball doing this,
and his first over goes for 2, and then they say, oh, actually not doing anything.
It's not doing anything,
and he's next to 2 6s and 2 4s off his next 2 overs.
Pump up the volume, right? And that informed that first 6 overs. They'd already gone to plan B, right? So but later on, Arshdeep and Hardik Pandya take those 2 wickets, and Hardik being able to come on as a 6 bowler in the rain meant that Ashwin, who went for I think 10 off an over, didn't need to bowl a subsequent over because it wasn't coming out right, and Akshar only had to bowl 1. That was before the rain. So everything kind of sequenced right for India because they got wickets when they needed to. But the point here is that I genuinely think Bangladesh snatched it too early. Even when the run rate required was going up, they had time. There was enough time to go, right, let's absorb some pressure for an over, maybe even 8 or 9 balls. I know it looks like, how could you allow yourself to let the run rate go to 15 needed off an over? But if they do that, then maybe they've got 2 more wickets and they're hitting with more authority at the end rather than relying on Tashkent Ahmed, who's their, who bats at number 8.
Who does a job. And so they come down to the last 2. They need 31 off the last 12 balls. And you're like, well, that's not going to happen. And then Tashkent goes through the covers and then that massive 6. And that helps. But Nurul Hassan has a swing and a miss at the last 2 balls of the over, misses out on both of them. And that doesn't help. The last ball of the over is a wide that doesn't get called, by the way, outside the tram tracks.
Bharat thought, on our comms, he's an umpire. My first thought is that he reckons if it goes right over the line like that,
not a wide,
he thinks that's okay. He's like I wouldn't give it.
Sure.
In his scenario. But you're right, though. You can see the Bangladesh fans were booing and whatnot. Right. Fair enough. I would have them.
So they need 20 off the last over. There's a single, then there's a 6 from Nurul Hassan. So they need 13 off 4. Then he turns down a single, 13 off 3. Then they take a brace down the ground and manage to get back, 11 off 2. And then he smokes a lovely boundary through backward point, but that's not what they need at that point. They need 6s, not 4s.
Which meant
so they need 7 off the last ball, 6 to tie, into the super over, all the rest of it. Can only get a single down the ground. I mean, bowling under that kind of pressure for Arshdeep Singh, tough. And pulled it off. Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot. Before the tournament, Rohit Sharma was asked about Arshdeep, and because Bumrah goes down and suddenly he's the man, right? He's 23, he's played for 5 minutes. IPL, sure, but for India, he made his debut earlier this year against England in England. He's relatively inexperienced at this level. And sure, he was player of the series against the Windies and all of that, but Asia Cup. But in terms of span of time, it isn't a long time to be asked to be the number 1 guy with Bhuvi, especially at the death, because Bhuvi doesn't bowl so well at the death.
Right.
And Rohit said, well, this guy's got confidence for days. Why wouldn't we back him in? He backs himself in. And that was reflected in the Yorkers he was willing to bowl. Remember the margin for error for Yorkers.
The fact that he telegraphed them, because he set his field with long off, long on. He didn't have anyone behind square. He bowled 1 short ball. That was the one that got hit for 6. Not short,
Slot
but
ball
length.
Almost, wasn't it? Length ball,
And that's the one that Nurul Hassan hits for 6. And after that, he goes, cool, I'm going to bowl 4 Yorkers in a row. I'm going to set my field for it. You are going to know exactly what I'm going to bowl, and you will not be able to hit me for 6s, and that's what happened.
So this is I think it's a Kimber analysis, if I recall correctly, about the number of missed Yorkers and how, there's some analysis on by how small it,
very dangerous.
by what margin you need to miss your Yorker for it to be not just a bad ball, but a 6 ball, right? And the only way Bangladesh are winning the game there are hitting sixes, and yet he still backed himself. Kind of comes back to that confidence point that this guy's like, no, that's cool, even if it is a wet ball, even if it is the pressure of a packed Adelaide Oval and World Cup and a tense game, a controversial game into its 5th hour by this stage, by the way. He's like, no, I've got this. I'll bowl 4 Yorkers. I mean, he's tomorrow's man in a way, but he's clearly like, he might end up player of the tournament.
Yeah.
He's leading wickets with Sam Curran at the moment.
Well, or Kohli might, because he's got the most runs in T20 World Cups now. I want to go back to India's innings. There's always this thing where Bangladesh are nervous and they bugger things up that they shouldn't when they're playing India. And that's kind of how it looks when Hassan Mahmood drops the catch in the 3rd over. Rohit Sharma pulls it away. It's dropped at deep backward square leg. It's a straightforward one. I mean, in the first 3 overs, in 18 balls, India have 5 scoring shots. They cannot get the ball away. And that includes the drop catch, by the way, that they run a single from. And it's under that pressure that Rohit hits it out there. And then Hassan Mahmood comes on to bowl the next over and gets him caught in the backward point.
And it was a soft shot from Rohit. He was out from 2 from 8, and it was just kind of like catching practice. And I get what he was trying to do, get it up and over, but with no real sort of, didn't have any blood going into it kind of thing. And I mean, it was a tough start. KL Rahul was not only letting balls go, but he couldn't make contact with Tashkent Ahmed's outswingers. Very rare to see a strike bowler who's crucial at the death bowl 4 off the top. They trusted him with that.
4 overs, none for 15.
And I really think credit to Shakib Al Hassan for not only having the guts to do that, because he was beating Kohli routinely. He's like, I'm going to have to try and manufacture a wicket here. He also did the same with himself, and he bowled his 4 overs, 2 for 33. Didn't need to bowl himself out, but got a wicket in the last over. He bowled out Mustafiza, I think, in over number 16. He bowled his last 2, I think, in 13 and 16. Again, this idea that we need wicket, and I think he got one then as well. So Shakib's whole attitude was, if we get wickets, we can keep this under control. The problem was they were leaving the 2 junior bowlers out of their quintet to bowl overs 18, 19, 20, and then they get away.
The other problem was that Kohli was still there at the other end. So KL Rahul does a real team thing, like takes the bowling on after those sparse few overs, 50 off 32 balls, gets them up and going. It's
fantastic,
they're, what are they, 76 off the first 9 overs, and that looks impossible from the first, say, 4 overs. He gets them up and running, then he gets out that top edge from Shakib. And then the wickets, so SKY does a job, 30 off 16, and that helps. But then when he gets out, wickets go regularly.
Completely against the flow of play, wasn't it? Both with KL Rahul and Surya Kumar Yadav, both men get out the ball, I think ball after boundaries or ball after looking godlike. And maybe 2 top edges.
Shakib bowls him. Shakib bowls Surya
Kumar
Kumar.
That's right, it was the one through the gate.
That decent delivery that skips on and beats the cut. And so then Hardik Pandya's out, caught at point. Dinesh Karthik's run out at a non-striker's end, was it? Akshar Patel's caught at cover. And so the wickets keep going, but Kohli just does his Kohli thing. He makes 64 off 44. He's not out. Ashwin clubs a 6 at the end, ends up with 13 off 6. Very useful. So it gets him to 185. Kohli's been not out in 4 of his last 5 innings. In his last half dozen games, he's taken his career average from 50 to 53. I mean, he's on a bloody hot streak. He's leading the tournament for runs. I think now he's gone past Max O'Dowd, and he's leading the all-time T20 World Cups for runs. So he's suddenly gone from being whispered about by some Indian supporters saying, "Oh, maybe this guy shouldn't still be here," to being, the impresario that he once was.
Yeah, the Ashwin bit interested me at the end as well. I was going to put this in the Hall of Fame, but we're talking about it now, where it was probably, if you play the percentages, it was in his interest, or India's interest, when we hit a single a couple of times, and both times it was in his interest to hit a single, hit a 6 and a 4. I love Ashwin. I just love the way that, despite being such a deep thinker and someone we truly admire, probably the guy who I'd love to see run world cricket one day. I mean, if anyone's going to do it, and assuming it'll be someone through the BCCI apparatus, I want it to be Ashwin, because he thinks deeply about all sorts of things, and he cares deeply about the game as well. And to think that even him, he's like, I got it, I'm going to fucking swat it. I like that from Ashwin. He's the most admirable player in this game.
A mighty 6 over deep backward square leg. So look, it got India enough runs, and you can argue about the fairness or otherwise of all of the different sort of ramifications that we've talked through there. But the important thing is, India could have been knocked out. If they'd lost this game, they would have then needed Pakistan to beat Bangladesh in order to put India into the semis. And who knows what would have happened in that equation.
It was going to be a glorious final day thrashing group. So now it'll probably be quite sedate, because a lot needs to happen to change the South African axis now. Like, it could happen, but it's so improbable.
The only way it can happen is if
Zimbabwe
India and South Africa both lose to opponents they shouldn't lose to. And so, look, that's unlikely. But speaking of mild upsets, I would say, I'll give you. I probably don't need 30 seconds for the Zimbabwe-Netherlands game. Zimbabwe batted horribly. 20 runs off the power play. Just couldn't hit it off the square. It was atrocious. They end up with 117 all out against the Dutch, and the Dutch just did it in cruise control. Max Haddad makes a 50. Tom Cooper, in one of his last appearances in Orange on his home ground here at Adelaide Oval, makes 32. They run it down relatively comfortably, and they get themselves a win. Not their first win at the main draw of a T20 World Cup, because they've beaten England twice at this stage in 2014 and 2009. Yeah. And they've had wins in the preview stages before, but they're they notched themselves a win here, the Dutch, and they've got South Africa to come.
Needed that drink just then. I think that didn't watch a load of the game. I must admit, I was preparing for the second game and didn't get a chance to kind of fully indulge in watching every ball of it. But what stood out was just how cruisy the chase was. At no point did they have any real pressure applied. I was really happy for Tom Cooper as well. When he walked off today, I kind of saw him look around a little bit, and you sense that this will be the end for him when he plays the final game of the Super 12s in a couple of days from now for the Dutch. That'll be the end of his international career, and lovely that he was able to play an innings of some substance this afternoon. There's a Hall of Fame moment in here too from the very end, which we might. Well, maybe we'll go there now.
Let me say one more thing before then. Sean Williams and Secunda Raza, I kind of feel for them. They were the two who stood up a bit. Secunda Raza makes 40 in quick time, and it was great to watch once again. And Williams tried. He's sort of been carrying this team around a bit himself when Raza's not doing it. And I mean, there was just something about how dispirited that performance was. It feels to me like sometimes the teams that come through the early stage, they're exhausted by this point.
I was going to say exactly the same thing. I've got a theory on this.
They played a lot of precipice cricket. They've sort of played knockout games effectively for a week. Then they're in against the big guys. Then maybe they get whacked once or twice, or they get an upset win like Zimbabwe did, and they're all excited about it, but then that adrenaline wears off. And I mean, it's a lot to try to process and to stay competitive sort of game after game after game.
It could not agree more. That my theory is that, and this is why I'm glad it's the last time it'll be set up like this, they're mentally knackered by now. If they're not, they're superhuman. Because you got to keep getting up. You're right about the elimination game factor. You play 3 games off the top. You need to win 2 of them to advance to the next round, and it's all or nothing there. I mean, think about the West Indies. They've been out of the country for like a week and a half by now. And they're a full member nation, of course. Ireland have that win over England. They play well, commendably, against Australia, but they know they're not getting through. I'm worried about what will happen to them in their last group game for that reason.
Against New Zealand,
we saw Zimbabwe beat Pakistan, then lose their next game, which was against...
they lost to
somebody,
Bangladesh.
To Bangladesh. That's it. And they looked
narrowly,
and it was commendable how they stuck with the task in the chase. But I watched a lot of that game earlier on, and they did look. Like they
were relying on their swinging from their tail to.
Well,
get
it was more to me, and again, it's all sort of reading body language. Like they were a side who'd had to climb the mountain a number of times just to get through, and then to beat Pakistan. How exciting it was, and just a little bit knackered. So I think it's a design flaw of the comp we've got here, and glad that next time around there'll be 20 teams starting from the same place rather than having this sort of, even the way they calculate stats on television, it's like, well, who's made the most runs in the Super 12 portion of the comp, thus almost ignoring what happened in the games that came before it. Like, either it's the World Cup or it's not, you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And people going, why is Max O'Dowd on the top of the thing with his extra games? Like, why does he have extra games? Because the organisers made him have extra games. You can't complain.
Which is good in another way as well, but on balance, this is a thing, and I reckon the last couple of days of the tournament, it'll become more of a thing.
Final Word Hall of Fame brought to you by CBUS Super. That's a superannuation company. That means they look after your money in retirement.
.com.au.
850,000 members in Australia who they look after very, very well indeed.
74
billion funds under management. Hall of Fame today.
That's double what Twitter cost to buy. Actually, not really when you do the conversion currency-wise, but...
but it's more. It's like 1.5.
It's probably worth about 20 times.
It's probably worth
Twitter's
20
worth
times
now,
given
that Twitter won't exist in about 2 weeks' time. The way things are travelling at the moment,
it's been driven into devalued. Now
I'm going to miss Twitter. In its own weird and wonderful way.
It's where we post some of these videos.
Yep.
Hall of Fame. What's your Hall of Fame nom?
The misstumping. The double misstumping at the end. This kind of summed up, because it was 3 to win, and they were 6 down, I think.
Yep.
And you can kind of see a world where if that stumping's executed,
maybe you put the squeeze on.
Maybe you put the squeeze on. It wasn't the last over or anything, but you can kind of see where that might happen. But Chabavka, wasn't it? Who was wicket-keeping, who had 2 separate goes at taking the bails off and missed the stumps twice.
Dropped the first one, they couldn't pick it up off the floor. I mean, I can't remember which player it was who was, because O'Dowd was out by that point. But it was scrambled.
It was Baz the leader, possibly?
Who'd pretty much given up trying to get back.
And no, it wasn't Baz the leader. He's got a broken face.
And he fronted up, and Hall of Fame to him for showing up and doing some interviews today with his eye opened up now. You can see out of both his eyes again. Isn't that nice? My Hall of Fame was with, I think, 2 overs to go when they needed 31 from 12 in the Bangladesh-India game, was Rohit Sharma walking up and saying in Hindi very audibly through the stump marks, if he leaves his ground, take his stumps out. And then he says in English to the umpire, if he leaves his ground early, we're taking his stumps.
I think he said, I'm going to smash the stumps out of the ground or something. It was good. I forgot about that. That was good. Bharat was translating to Hindi a bit back through. And that was a highlight. So, I mean, I'm happy to go with that.
More of it, we say.
CBUSSuper.com.
There's your warning. I'll give you a warning at the start of the over before we even bowl.
I'll give you a warning at the start. I'll give you a warning here. If you don't sort your super out, you'll regret it later. CBUSSuper.com.au. 8.88% average return over 38 years. We say it all the time, why wouldn't we? They're a beautiful set of numbers. Past performance, though, not a reliable indicator of future performance.
Sure, it's important.
That's the caveat.
Got to know that.
But just a reminder, 8.8%, 38 years. Beautiful numbers.
Right, I think this is it. The final word, T20 World Cup Daily, day 18. I'm going to say 18. It feels right. We're all grown up. It's our 18th birthday. We've
off to put on a bet.
We've only got a few. Off to purchase our first 6-pack of delicious
off to buy a
scratchy. Off to buy a scratchy and enjoy the winnings that will inevitably follow. Yes, gambling. Great. It's the end of the show. We'll see you tomorrow.
I'm off to get my P plates.
Because that's how dailies work. If you were 17, you could have got them in New South Wales. That's how daily shows work. We'll be here every day until the tournament's
tomorrow
over.
There's a game being played in Sydney. It's between
2 teams.
2 nations.
Who we will look up
who
later.
Are in the Super 12s, and they're playing in
Pakistan
Group 2. Pakistan playing South Africa. It's a game of some significance, although after tonight, perhaps a little bit less than would have been the case had Bangladesh got the job done.
In a way, they're still in it. Jim Carrey style, you're saying there's a chance? There's a chance for Pakistan. Righto, that's enough from us. Jeff Lemon, Adam Collins. See you later.
Night.